Shana Tova, everyone. Welcome to a new year, 5786. I have to begin first with immense gratitude to Rabbi Jason Klein and to this holy community. I am truly honored and privileged to be sharing words of Torah this evening, and I hope I have something worthy to say. So we're not only entering into 5786, but we are nearing the end of 2025 in the secular calendar, a full quarter century into the new millennium. So what have these last 25 years since the year 2000 been about? I'm just going to pause for a moment. I think that if math people are correct, it's actually the 26th year, but I'm just going to keep saying the 25th year because it sounds better. So what have the last 25 years been about? When thinking about it like that, it's been a wild ride of 25 years. Let's just recount some of what we've been through. 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, iPhones, the financial collapse of 2008, the victory of marriage equality as the law of the land, finally, our nation's first black president, the heartbreak of 2016, COVID and everything that came with it, our first female vice president, the crushing news of the fall of Roe, just to name a few. If there's anything else anybody wants to make sure is said from those last 25 years, this is your opportunity at this moment. And now I want you to think personally also of where you've been in these last 25 years. How many apartments or houses have you had or moved into? How many jobs have you held? How many people have you lost? How many people have we lost? And how many people have you loved? And that brings us to now, the current moment that we're in. It is hard to look out at this current landscape and not feel some combination of loneliness, anxiety, depression, or despair. In the Jewish community in particular, the pain and heartbreak of October 7th, 2023 has not dissipated. Not in a global way, where there are still close to 50 hostages being held in Gaza who have not come home in 2 years. I don't know how to think about that without feeling incensed at the world that has let this go on. It feels inconceivable. And we also see the brutal suffering and starvation of Gazan civilians every single day who have been without food or safety for these 2 years as well. And I don't know how to witness that without feeling like, how have we not been able to say, no, it's enough, there has been enough suffering, we need to stop this seemingly unending war. In a more personal way to us and our community and communities around the world, October 7th has fractured Jewish communities everywhere, also seemingly with no end. As a rabbi, it is a topic that causes me some of the most pain. The conversation feels so polarized and broken, and with so much continual heartache, that it feels hard to even know how to begin to speak about it. I'm just going to add on, in addition, although it could be a whole nother Drashah, that no matter where we've been, I think we can all also agree this is not the America that we expected to find ourselves in, with so much violence and anger seemingly everywhere. This past year alone was a heartbreaking reality check between what we had hoped for and what we have received. So, these last 25 years have been about many different things. But Derek Thompson at The Atlantic has dubbed it, he wrote an article where he dubbed it, the anti-social century, which perhaps more than anything else has been a major defining point of these last 25 years. The greater acceptance in our culture for alone time and isolation. He's very careful to say that this is not about pathologizing loneliness. It's perfectly normal to feel lonely and disconnected at times. The problem is that that feeling of loneliness used to be the cue that we needed to go out and spend time with others in community. And that cue is now being ignored. So that instead of loneliness ultimately leading to more connection, loneliness now cues us to go deeper inside our own bubble and not seek out companionship to counteract it. The result is a world with less intimate relationships, less connections, and more seclusion and separation from others. Additionally, we've made it incredibly easy for ourselves to walk through our daily life without needing to interact with anyone else. We have made for ourselves what I'm going to call a frictionless life. We can order food and prescriptions online with ease. We can get our groceries delivered. We can watch TV and movies at home instead of going to the theater. We can shop for clothing online and even return the clothes without needing to speak to anyone in some cases. We can ask AI for advice instead of our friends or families. We can walk down the street or be on the subway listening to music or books or podcasts at all times with our headphones on and shut out everyone else around us. Generally, we are able to get what we want or what we need without interacting with anyone else and without much hardship. This isn't all bad, of course. Everything being generally more accessible to more people is an overall good. However, we've made it all too easy for ourselves to ignore others as much as possible. And I think that a life without any friction at all, no obstacles, no real reason to go outside our comfort zone or do things that might be challenging or hard for us, nothing interrupting our personal point of view, this can perpetuate loneliness and isolation. A life without any type of resistance is in many ways also a life without connection. We need to rub up against something else every once in a while. As human beings, I think we also need a little friction, I'm going to call it good friction, in our lives to remind us that we are still alive and not just robots walking through life on autopilot. On Rosh Hashanah, we proclaim, Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the day the world was created. But that leads to a big question. What do we mean when we say that? Do we mean that the words Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, do we mean that that's what happened on the 1st of Tishrei starting tonight? Is it the creation of light and darkness that we're commemorating? The sun and the moon? It turns out that the rabbis, at least, agreed that the 1st of Tishrei is actually the day that humanity was created. It was the day that Adam and Eve were created. Everything else, the lights, the sky, the moon, the sun, the creepy crawly creatures, those were all created in Elul. It is not until God created Adam that we say, Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the day the world was created. So here we are on the 1st of Tishrei. And really, it's also the day that the original frictionless paradise was created, the Garden of Eden. After all, in Gan Eden, Adam has everything he could possibly want or need with no hardship at all. And the only limit he is given is not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The very next thing that happens after God gives Adam the instructions about the tree, the very next verse is that God says, Lo tov hiyot Adam levado. It is not good for Adam to be alone. Or perhaps read more expansively, it is not good for humanity to live in isolation. God says, I will make him an ezer kenegdo, someone who is a fitting helper, his counterpart. I want to point out that there is no gender associated with ezer kenegdo. It is someone who will rise to Adam's level, who will be his equal. Rashi points out that actually there's two words here. Adam is getting someone who's his ezer, his helper, and also someone who is his negdo, his opposite. The Talmud and other commentaries go even further. They say these two words are used because when Adam is worthy, when he's doing good, Eve will come to be a help and to support him. But when he's not worthy, she will come to fight against him. In other words, humanity needs both. Someone who can help us, but also someone who can challenge us. Good friction in order to not be alone. According to the Zohar, the tree of knowledge of good and evil contains both the knowledge of how to be good and upright and moral, and also the knowledge of how to turn towards evil. In the garden, without it, Adam and Eve never have to think or make decisions, but they also don't have any awareness of how to care for one another. The tree contains both, the good and the bad. What happens next in the story is that we do eat from the tree of good and evil. We are kicked out of the garden, we begin to know our own limitations and failings. We become people who know violence, but also people who are now intimate with one another. We are no longer immortal. In other words, we become human beings, imperfect and alive. There's a beautiful midrash that comes out of this part of the story, which asks, how can humans be like God now that they are no longer immortal, but that they live here on earth? And the answer is that just like God clothed Adam and Eve in the garden, it is our job to clothe the naked. Just like God is Adam's wedding attendant and brings him to Eve, it is our job to be attendant and joyful at weddings and unions. Just like God visited Abraham after his circumcision, it is our job to visit the sick. Just like God comforted Abraham and Isaac after the death of Sarah, it is our job to comfort the mourners among us. Lo tov hiot adam levado. We were never meant to live in isolation from one another. The truth is that being a human being is hard. We make mistakes. We say the wrong thing. We feel awkward. We are accidentally selfish when we mean to be selfless. We get anxious. We let people down. We are not as informed or knowledgeable as we would like to be when we speak. We assume the wrong intent of others. We mean to call or visit when someone is not doing well or has asked us to, but we forget or we stop ourselves because it's hard. It is a messy business being alive, and it can sometimes feel easier to hide away and ignore others and skip the whole thing entirely, rather than try to be with others and do it imperfectly. So how do we move forward from this place of fracture and isolation that we're in and into a place where we at least try to be present with one another? I want to close by bringing in one more text from the Talmud in Brachot, which says that if we had the supernatural ability to see more than what is right in front of us, our eyes would become overwhelmed by the amount of demons we could see, because, the Talmud says, they are everywhere. The implication is that the opportunity to turn away from caring for one another is everywhere. The Talmud asks, how can we be sure of this even when we cannot see it with our eyes? The answer given is interesting. It says that it is that the evidence of these demons are also everywhere too. When our knees give out even when we did not exert ourselves, that's the work of the demons. When our clothes begin to fray or tear even when we've done no labor, that's the work of the demons. So I want to extrapolate on this a little bit more. Signs of wear and tear without any friction or exertion, that's the work of the demons. The Talmud is showing us the small ways that this is true, but I think it's true in larger ways as well. A community that is having a hard time talking to one another or hearing one another, a world where things feel like they are so close to the breaking point at any given moment, that is the work of the demons. In times like these, it can be very tempting to turn inward, to not engage, especially with a world around us that is so hard and so polarized. But if we do that, if we choose to turn only inward and further isolate, then the demons begin to win. As humans, we need connections with others. We need to sometimes walk to the corner store and have a conversation with the bodega owner who sells us toilet paper and bananas, who might be totally different from us. We need to practice calling people on the phone and checking in on them just because. We need to develop our appetites for having conversations with others who do not just constantly affirm us, but actually say something that irks us or gets a rise out of us, something that feels a little bit like a thorn in our sides, so that we have to mull it over and think about our own ideas and our own opinions and preconceived notions. We need to get comfortable with a little bit of friction. Lo tov hiot adam levado. It is not good for us to live with so much isolation. As we enter into 5786, let's remember that our first human act was to recognize our own vulnerability and nakedness. We are still inherently vulnerable beings, and the response has always been, in that case, to care for one another, to clothe, to feed, to visit, to mourn, to help when needed, and to challenge when needed. This means that we have to imperfectly comfort one another, be imperfectly intimate with one another, And we also have to let ourselves be imperfectly comforted and talked to and visited. Not because this means we're not going to let other people down or say the wrong thing or disagree on matters of incredible importance. Of course, we're going to do all those things. But because how do we expect to have a community if we can't let ourselves be real and messy and human in front of one another? So here's to a year of more care, more messing up, more challenge, more opportunities to be imperfect, more supporting, more conversations, more friction, and more showing up as each other's ezer kenegdo. Shana tova umetuka. Happy New Year.